The mysterious arrival, the coffee shop encounter, the rain, drummed against the windows of Luna's coffee corner like impatient fingers tapping on glass. I sat in my usual corner booth, laptop open, pretending to work on my novel while actually watching people walk by in the storm. That's when she walked in, shaking droplets from her dark hair like some kind of ethereal creature who'd just stepped out of a fairy tale. She was different from the usual crowd that frequented Luna's. Her clothes seemed expensive but understated, and there was something about the way she moved that suggested she was used to being watched but didn't particularly enjoy it. What caught my attention most, though, was the bracelet on her left wrist. It looked ancient, made of what appeared to be silver, with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change when the light hit them just right. And I, unusual order, she approached the counter where Danny, the owner's son, was working his usual afternoon shift. I couldn't help but eavesdrop as she ordered something I'd never heard before, a drink that sounded like it belonged in a fantasy novel rather than a coffee shop. Danny looked confused, but she described it patiently, as if she was used to explaining things that others didn't understand. Hot water, honey, crushed cardamom, and just a touch of rose water, she said softly. Her voice had a slight accent I couldn't place. It's an old family recipe. Danny nodded and got to work, though I could see him glancing at her curiously. She found a seat 2 tables away from mine, close enough that I could observe her without being obvious about it. She pulled out a leather journal and began writing, her pen moving across the pages in fluid, graceful strokes. The bracelet's strange behavior. As I watched her write, something odd happened. The bracelet on her wrist began to glow faintly, so subtle that I thought I might be imagining it. But then it happened again, a soft pulsing light that seemed to synchronize with her breathing. I rubbed my eyes, thinking the long hours at my computer were finally catching up with me. When I looked again, she was staring directly at me. Her eyes were an unusual shade of green, almost luminescent in the dim light of the coffee shop. She'd caught me watching, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," I said, closing my laptop and standing up. "I didn't mean to stare. I'm Jake, by the way." She studied me for a moment before responding. "Zara," she said simply. "And you weren't staring at me. You were staring at this." She held up her wrist, showing the bracelet. A warning and an attraction, I moved closer to her table, drawn by both curiosity and an inexplicable attraction to this mysterious woman. "It's beautiful," I said, reaching out instinctively to touch. Don't," she said sharply, pulling her hand back. The bracelet pulsed brighter for just a moment. "Please don't touch it. It's complicated." There was something in her voice that made me step back. Fear? Sadness? I couldn't tell, but it was clear that the bracelet was more than just jewelry to her. "I'm sorry," I said again. "I have this terrible habit of being curious about things that are none of my business." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Curiosity isn't always a bad thing, but some things are dangerous to be curious about." An unexpected connection. We talked for the next 2 hours. She told me she was new to town, that she'd moved here for work, but was vague about what kind of work she did. I told her about my writing, about how I'd been struggling with my latest novel because I couldn't seem to find inspiration anywhere. "Maybe inspiration finds you when you're not looking for it," she said, glancing down at her bracelet. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself completely captivated by her. She was intelligent, funny in a dry way, and there was something otherworldly about her that I couldn't shake. But every time our conversation turned to personal topics, she would deflect or change the subject. When she finally said she had to leave, I felt a strange sense of loss. "Will I see you again?" I asked as she gathered her things. She paused at the door, looking back at me. "That depends," she said. "Are you brave enough to handle the truth about some things?" Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone, disappearing into the evening rain. I sat back down at my table, staring at the spot where she'd been sitting. That's when I heard it, a whisper, so faint I wasn't sure it was real. "Jake." I looked around the coffee shop, but there was no one nearby who could have said my name. Danny was in the back, and the only other customer was an elderly man reading a newspaper across the room. But I could have sworn I heard someone whisper my name. It wasn't until I was walking home that night that I realized something impossible. The voice that had whispered my name in the coffee shop, it had sounded like it was coming from the direction where Zara had been sitting. More specifically, it had sounded like it was coming from her bracelet. Sleepless nights and vivid dreams, I couldn't stop thinking about Zara. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying our conversation over and over in my mind. There was something about her that felt familiar, as if I'd known her before we met. But that was impossible. I would have remembered someone like her. When I finally fell asleep, my dreams were filled with strange visions. I saw ancient cities built into cliffs, people with eyes like Zara's, and always, that bracelet glowing with an inner light. In my dreams, I could hear voices speaking in languages I didn't recognize, but somehow I understood every word. Woke up exhausted, with the distinct feeling that my dreams hadn't been dreams at all, but memories of something I'd never experienced. The research begins the next morning. I found myself at the local library, though I couldn't explain what I was looking for. I started with ancient jewelry, then moved on to archaeological finds, then to folklore and mythology. Hours passed as I scrolled through digital archives and dusty reference books. That's when I found it, a photograph in an old anthropology journal. The image was grainy, taken at an excavation site in Turkey. But there, on the wrist of a statue, dating back 3,000 years, was a bracelet identical to the one Zara wore. My hands shook as I read the article. The statue was of a priestess from a civilization that had supposedly vanished overnight. The archaeologists who discovered it claimed the bracelet couldn't be removed from the statue's wrist, as if it had been carved as part of the stone itself. But what caught my attention was the final paragraph of the article. A disturbing discovery. Local. Legends speak of the priestesses of this lost civilization possessing the ability to communicate across time itself. The bracelets were said to be conduits for this communication, allowing the wearer to send messages to those they were connected to, regardless of when or where they lived. I printed the article and several others I'd found, my mind racing. Was it possible that Zara's bracelet was somehow connected to this ancient civilization? It sounded crazy, but then again, everything about my encounter with her had felt otherworldly. Returned to Luna's coffee corner for the next 3 days. I returned to Luna's at the same time, hoping to see Zara again. Each day I brought my research with me, spreading the printed articles across my table like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. On the 4th day, she appeared as suddenly as she had the first time. One moment the seat across from me was empty. The next moment she was sitting there, looking at my collection of papers with an expression I couldn't read. "You've been busy," she said, picking up the article about the Turkish excavation. I couldn't stop thinking about your bracelet, I admitted. There's something about it that seems ... impossible. She was quiet for a long moment, studying the photograph of the ancient statue. What if I told you that impossible things happen every day? That there are truths in this world that most people aren't ready to accept? The first revelation, I'd say I'm ready to listen, I replied, though I wasn't sure if that was true. Zara looked around the coffee shop, making sure no one was close enough to overhear us. Then she held up her wrist, letting the bracelet catch the afternoon light. "This bracelet has been in my family for generations," she said quietly, "but not in the way you might think. We don't pass it down from mother to daughter. It chooses who will wear it next." "Chooses?" I repeated, She nodded. It's alive, in a way. Not like an animal or a plant, but it has consciousness. It has purpose, and it's been waiting for something. Or someone. As if responding to her words, the bracelet pulsed with that same soft light I'd seen before. This time, I was certain I wasn't imagining it. A connection revealed the night we met. I said slowly, I heard something. A voice saying my name. I thought I was going crazy. Zara's eyes widened slightly. You heard it speak to you? I think so. It sounded like it was coming from... I gestured toward her bracelet. She stared at me for a long moment, then looked down at the bracelet. It was glowing more brightly now, pulsing in a steady rhythm. That's not possible, she whispered. It's never spoken to anyone but me and the women in my family before me. Never to an outsider. What does that mean? I asked, though part of me was afraid of the answer, that an ancient Bonzera was quiet for so long that I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. In the old stories, there were partnerships between the guardians, the women who wore the bracelets, and certain individuals who could hear their call across time and space. These partnerships were rare, sacred, and incredibly powerful. She looked up at me, her green eyes intense. The bracelet speaking to you means it recognizes something in you, a connection that transcends this life, this time. What kind of connection? I asked, my heart beating faster. The kind that suggests we've known each other before, in other lives, other times. The kind that means our meeting wasn't a coincidence. As she spoke, I felt something shift inside me, like a door opening in my mind. Suddenly, the dreams I'd been having made sense. The feeling of familiarity when I first saw her. The inexplicable pull I felt toward both her and the bracelet. So what happens now? I asked. Zara smiled, but there was sadness in it. Now things get complicated. Because if the bracelet has chosen you as my partner in this, it means there's something coming. Something that will require both of us to remember who we really are. Memories awakened the midnight visit 3 days after our conversation at the coffee shop. I was awakened by a soft tapping at my apartment window. I lived on the 3rd floor, so I knew it couldn't be a tree branch or an animal. Gradually, I stumbled to the window and pulled back the curtains. Zara stood on the fire escape, her bracelet glowing so brightly it cast shadows in the darkness. Her eyes were wide with urgency, and I could see she'd been crying. Jake, she whispered as I opened the window. I need your help. Something's happening. I helped her climb through the window, noting how cold her skin felt despite the warm night. What's wrong? What time is it? It's 3 a.m, she said, pacing my small living room. But time doesn't matter right now. The bracelet has been showing me things, memories that aren't mine. And in all of them, you're there. Visions of the past. She sat on my couch, holding her head in her hands. I've been seeing us in different times, different places. Ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, the American frontier. Always together, always fighting something dark. I sat beside her, feeling the truth of her words resonate in my bones. I've been having similar dreams, but I thought they were just my imagination running wild. They're not dreams, she said, looking up at me. They're memories. The bracelet stores them, passes them down through time. And now it's awakening them, both of us. She held out her wrist, and I could see symbols appearing and disappearing. In the bracelet's surface, like words being written in light. What is it trying to tell us? I asked. The guardian's purposara took a deep breath. My family's true history isn't what I told you before. We're not just jewelry collectors or artifact dealers. We're guardians, protectors of a gateway between worlds. For thousands of years, my ancestors have stood watch against something that wants to break through. Break through to where? Here, our world, our reality. She stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights. There are creatures, beings from a dimension where chaos reigns. They've been trying to find a way into our world for millennia. The bracelet is part of an ancient defense system designed to keep them at bay. I felt a chill run down my spine. And me? What's my role in all this? She turned back to me, her expression serious. In every lifetime, when the threat grows strong. Enough, the bracelet calls for help. It finds someone with the right frequency, I suppose you'd call it. Someone who can amplify its power. The first test, as if summoned by our conversation, the temperature in my apartment suddenly dropped. Frost began forming on the windows, and I could see my breath in the air. They know, Zara whispered, the bracelet now blazing like a small sun. On her wrist. They can sense that the connection has been made. The lights in my apartment flickered and went out. In the darkness, I could hear something scratching at the walls, as if trying to claw its way through from inside. What do we do? I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Take my hand, Zara said, reaching out to me. The bracelet needs both of us to work properly. The moment our hands touched, the world exploded into light and sensation. I could feel Zara's memories flowing into me, lifetimes of knowledge and experience. I saw her in ancient robes, standing before stone altars. I saw her in medieval armor, sword in hand. I saw her in pioneer clothing, facing down creatures that defied description. And in every memory, I was there beside her, different faces, but always the same soul. Power awakened, the scratching sounds grew louder, more insistent. Cracks appeared in my walls, and through them, I could see something moving in the darkness beyond. Focus, Zara said, squeezing my hand tighter. Remember who you are. Remember what we can do together. Knowledge flooded my mind. Words and languages I'd never learned. Gestures that felt as natural as breathing. I understood now why the bracelet had called to me, why I'd felt so drawn to Zara from the moment I saw her. We raised our joined hands, and light poured from the bracelet, filling my apartment with golden radiance. The scratching stopped. The cracks in the walls sealed themselves. The temperature began to return to normal. A new understanding when the light faded. We stood in my apartment, still holding hands, both of us breathing heavily. Is it over? I asked. For now, Zara replied. But that was just a test. They wanted to see if the connection between us was real. Now they know it is. I looked around my apartment, which showed no signs of the supernatural attack we'd just experienced. So what happens next? Next, we prepare, she said, finally releasing my hand. Because now that they know we're together again, they'll try everything to stop us before we can fulfill our purpose. The price of knowledge. And what is our purpose exactly? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Zara walked to my window and looked out at the city. There's a convergence coming, a time when the barriers between worlds are at their weakest. It happens every few centuries, and each time, we've been there to strengthen the barriers, to keep the chaos from spilling through. She turned back. To me, her expression both sad and determined. But this time is different. This time, if we fail, there won't be another chance. The barriers will fall permanently, and our world will be consumed by chaos. I sat down heavily on my couch, trying to process everything I'd learned. And you're sure I'm the right person for this? I mean, yesterday, I was just a struggling writer who couldn't even finish his novel. Zara smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it reached her eyes. The bracelet doesn't make mistakes, Jake. It chose you because you're exactly who we need, who I need. There was something in the way she said those last words that made my heart skip a beat. Despite everything we'd just learned about ancient prophecies and interdimensional threats, I found myself focusing on the woman in front of me, on the connection I felt to her that went beyond duty or destiny. "So," I said, standing up and moving closer to her, "when do we start training for the end of the world?" Love in the time of chaos training and growing closer. The next few weeks passed in a blur of intensive training and growing intimacy. Zara moved into my apartment, claiming it was necessary for us to stay close so the bracelet could maintain its full power. I didn't argue, partly because it made strategic sense, but mostly because I found myself falling for her more each day. During the days, she taught me to harness the abilities that came with my connection to the bracelet. I learned to see through dimensional barriers, to sense when the creatures from the chaos realm were near, and to channel energy through my hands to create protective shields. "You're a natural at this," Zara said one afternoon as we practiced. In an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. "Most people take months to learn what you've picked up in days." "Maybe I had a good teacher," I replied, unable to keep the smile out of my voice. She blushed, something I'd noticed she did more often lately. The mysterious, otherworldly woman I'd first met was still there, but I was seeing more of the person beneath the guardian persona. She laughed at my terrible jokes, got excited about small things like finding a perfect avocado at the grocery store, and had admitted to having a secret addiction to reality TV shows. Vulnerable moments one evening. As we sat on my couch sharing takeout Chinese food, I noticed her bracelet was dimmer than usual. "Are you okay?" I asked. "The bracelet seems tired." Zara set down her chopsticks and looked at her wrist. "It's not the bracelet, it's me. I've been carrying this responsibility for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be normal." "What do you mean?" She curled up beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. "I was 8 years old when the bracelet chose me. From that moment on, my entire life was about preparing for this convergence. I never had friends my own age, never went to regular school, never had a normal relationship. I felt a surge of protectiveness toward her. That sounds lonely." "It was," she admitted quietly. "Until now. Being with you, it's like I'm finally getting to experience all the things I missed." "The first kiss, Zara," I said, tilting her chin up so she was looking at me. "You know this isn't just about the bracelet. For me, right? My feelings for you, they're real. They're mine, not some mystical connection." Her eyes searched mine. "How can you be sure? How can either of us be sure what's real and what's the influence of ancient magic?" "Because," I said, leaning closer, "to her, magic might have brought us together, but it can't make me love the way you scrunch your nose when you're concentrating, or how you always save the fortune cookie for last, or the little sound you make when you're happy." "Jake," she whispered, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. "I love you," I said simply. "Not the guardian, not the chosen one. You, Zara, the woman who's afraid of horror movies but faces interdimensional monsters without flinching." She kissed me then, soft and tentative at first, then with growing passion. The bracelet flared with light, but for once, I didn't think about its power or purpose. I only thought about the woman in my arms, and how perfectly she fit there. Interrupted. Our peaceful evening was shattered by a sound like glass breaking, though nothing in my apartment had moved. Zara pulled away from me, instantly alert. "They're close," she said, the bracelet now pulsing rapidly. "Closer than they've ever been." I could feel it too now, a wrongness in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm, but infinitely more ominous. The shadows in the corners of my apartment seemed deeper, and I could swear I saw things moving in them. "The convergence," I said. "It's starting, isn't it?" Zara nodded grimly. "We have maybe hours before the barriers weaken enough for them to break through. We need to get to the focal point." "Which is where?" The place where the first guardian made her stand 3,000 years ago. A place where your soul first touched mine across the dimensions of time. The sacred site she led me through the city to a small park I'd passed countless times, but never really noticed. In the center was a seemingly ordinary stone monument, weathered and old, with inscriptions in a language I couldn't read. "This is it?" I asked. "The monument is just a marker," Zara explained. "The real focal point is underneath." She pressed her bracelet against a specific symbol on the stone, and suddenly the ground beneath us began to shift. A staircase appeared, leading down into darkness. "Every major city has one of these," she said as we descended. "Hidden temples, forgotten by the modern world, but still serving their purpose." The stairs led to a circular chamber carved from living rock. Ancient symbols covered every surface, and in the center was a raised platform with 2 indentations, clearly meant for people to stand in. "The last stand," I said, the words coming from some deep memory. "Every time we've made our stand." "Here," Zara confirmed. "And every time we've held them back." "But Jake, I need you to know something." The terrible truth she turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. "In every other lifetime, we've succeeded, but at a cost. The energy required to seal the barriers. It's killed us both. We've died together, only to be reborn decades later when the threat rises again." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You're saying that to save the world, we have to die?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "This time feels different. The connection between us is stronger than it's ever been. Maybe that means we can survive. Or maybe it just means we'll die more completely." I pulled her into my arms. "Then we face it together, like we always have." "Jake, you don't understand. I've started remembering our other deaths. The pain, the fear, the regret. I can't bear the thought of losing you again, especially now that I know what it means to love you." Anew planned the chamber began to shake, and cracks appeared in the walls. Through them, I could see writhing darkness, chaos itself pressing against our reality. "What if we don't have to die?" I said suddenly. "What if there's another way? Jake, we've tried everything across lifetimes. This is the only way. But we've never tried it with this level of connection," I argued. "You said yourself this time is different. Maybe instead of sacrificing ourselves to power the barriers, we can become part of them, permanent guardians." Zara stared at me. "That would mean giving up our human lives entirely. We'd exist as pure energy, consciousness without form. Together." I said, "We'd be together forever, protecting the world we love." The shaking intensified, and I could hear sounds from beyond the chaos that made my soul recoil. "It's time to choose," I said, taking her hands and leading her to the platform. "Death and rebirth, or eternal guardianship together." She looked into my eyes, and I saw her decision before she spoke it. "Together," she said. "Always together. Forever guardians." The final stand. We took our positions on the ancient platform as the chaos pressed against the weakening barriers. The bracelet blazed with intensity I'd never seen before, and I could feel power coursing through both of us like lightning in our veins. "Remember," Zara said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes, "we're not just fighting for this world. We're fighting for every moment of love, every laugh, every tear that makes life worth living." The walls of the chamber began to crack and crumble. Through the gaps, I could see shapes that hurt to look at directly, beings of pure malevolence. Chaos that existed only to destroy and corrupt. "Now!" Zara shouted. We joined hands, and the world exploded into light and sensation. I felt our consciousness merge, our souls intertwining until I couldn't tell where I ended and she began. The power of the bracelet flowed through us, but it was amplified by something far stronger than ancient magic. Love. Pure, unconditional, transcendent love. The transformation, instead of using our life force to power the barriers, we poured our love into them. Every shared glance, every whispered word, every moment of connection across lifetimes. The barriers didn't just strengthen, they transformed, becoming something new and permanent. I felt my physical form beginning to dissolve, but I wasn't afraid. Zara was with me, her essence wrapped around mine like an embrace that would last forever. Jake, her voice echoed in my mind. Can you feel it? We're becoming part of something beautiful. I could feel it. We were becoming the barrier itself. Our combined consciousness spread across the dimensional boundary, eternal guardians watching over the world we'd chosen to protect. The new reality, the chaos creatures recoiled from the transformed barrier, unable to even approach it. Where before there had been a wall of energy that could be worn down over time, now there was a living boundary infused with human love and determination that our physical bodies were gone. But we existed now as something greater. We could see the entire world spread out before us, feel every heartbeat of every person we protected. We could sense love blooming between strangers, children taking their first steps, artists creating beauty from nothing. Was it worth it? I asked Zara, though we no longer needed words to communicate. Every moment, she replied. Look, Jake, look what we're protecting. The continuing story time moved differently for us now. We watched seasons change, civilizations rise and fall, but always we were there, invisible guardians keeping the chaos at bay. Sometimes we would manifest briefly in the physical world, appearing to those who needed guidance or protection. A mysterious woman with an ancient bracelet, helping a struggling writer find his inspiration. A young man who appeared just in time to prevent an accident. Always together, even when taking different forms. We became legends whispered in coffee, shops and libraries. The guardian angel couple who appeared when love was threatened by forces beyond understanding. The mysterious pair who showed up at weddings where the love was true, their presence blessing the union with protection that would last lifetimes. Love eternal centuries past, and our love only grew stronger. We had become something unprecedented, not just guardians powered by duty, but protectors driven by an unbreakable bond of affection and devotion. Do you ever regret it? Zara asked me one day as we watched a young couple fall in love on a park bench near our old focal point. Giving up a normal life? How could I regret becoming everything I never knew I wanted? I replied. We're more used now than we ever were as separate beings. The bracelet, now a permanent part of our combined essence, pulsed with warm light. It had completed its purpose, not just protecting the world, but creating something new in the process. A new beginning. As our story drew to a close, we realized it was also a beginning. Our sacrifice had created a new type of guardian, one that future generations would study and aspire to become. Love, we had discovered, was not just an emotion, but a force capable of reshaping reality itself. Young people across the world began to report dreams of a mysterious couple who taught them that true love could overcome any obstacle, even death itself. Artists painted visions of eternal guardians who danced between dimensions. Writers crafted stories of lovers who became one with the universe to protect everything they held dear. The promise we made a promise that echoed across time itself. As long as love existed in the world, as long as humans were capable of putting others before themselves, we would be there. Not as separate entities bound by ancient duty, but as proof that love could transcend every boundary, overcome every obstacle, and last forever. The bracelet had brought us together, but it was our choice to remain together that made us eternal. In becoming guardians, we had discovered the ultimate truth, that love is not just worth protecting, but is itself the greatest protection of all. And so we remain, Jake and Zara, no longer bound by time or space, watching over a world that continues to create new love stories every day. Our own love story had become part of the fabric of reality itself, a reminder that some bonds are truly unbreakable. The bracelet still calls to those who are meant to hear it, but now its message is different. It no longer speaks of duty and sacrifice, but of love and transformation. And sometimes, just sometimes, those who listen carefully might hear it whisper two names that have become legend: Jake and Zara, the guardians who chose love over everything else, and in doing so, saved us all.